Yes. Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and yes, I've played Metroid Dread. I went to Nintendo UK, they invited me and everything, I didn't just turn up, and I got to play it. I got to play it on an OLED as well, and so I'm going to tell you my experiences with it, because I slightly enjoyed myself. Some of what you're about to see is going to be B-roll directly from Nintendo, which means it's stuff that they've recorded, but anything that looks like this, with my hands in it, that's all me, baby. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Okay, so where to begin? Well, I think I'm going to start off talking about the movement, because the movement is a big bloomin' deal. It's not something that I really got when I watched the Treehouse and things like that and all the trailers. You get a rough idea, but when it's actually in your hands, it took me a moment to get used to it, but when I did, oh god, Samus is just... she's moving with... the only way I can describe it is a degree of fluidity and grace that I've just never seen before. Maybe slightly, I hate to bring it up, but slightly in Other M, you know, with things like the movement was actually quite fluid when you were running around not listening to Adam all the time. Adam's in the game as well, we're talking about him later, but the movement is just... it's just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. The level design has been perfectly tailored to be able to use things like the new slide and things like that in order to move around with just this unholy level of grace. And it sounds really silly, but in a weird way, it reminded me of Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Not in the sense of moving around and stuff like that, but just how fluid the combat is and how effortless it is. I'm kind of getting a bit of vibe of that with Samus as well. And a big thing as well is there's no structure to this video. I'm just going to be blurting stuff. Just like in Samus Returns, you've got the full range of aiming, you know, up and down and all that sort of thing, rather than, you know, the older games where even the original Metroid, it was just straight ahead, baby. And that makes an incredible amount of difference. And while Samus Returns, it had the new counter mechanic in it, it lent... I don't want to say entirely on that, but it lent fairly heavily into the countering and things like that in the melee. And the counter's still there, but it doesn't push it nearly as hard. If you don't, it's much safer, actually, to use the arm cannon as much as you can. And if you can use the arm cannon, aim up slightly and shoot one of those enemies, I have no idea what they're called because there's a new planet in it. That is a much safer option, and you're far less likely to take damage if you do that, rather than stand still, wait for the thing, counter, and then shoot it. You know, that still works, absolutely, but it's providing you options. And one of the things that was always a little bit rigid about Metroid for me was the fact that, you know, sort of you couldn't really aim. I mean, you could sort of aim at a 45-degree angle, and that was useful, but it wasn't... it didn't have that same degree of movement. If they weren't 45 degrees directly in front of you or directly above you, you generally couldn't shoot them. I mean, I know you could jump and shoot and stuff like that, obviously, but even so, that full range of movement, I liked it in what I played of Samus Returns, absolutely. But here, I even with the Joy-Con, it felt super accurate and just super lovely. And again, took me a while to get used to it, but I talked all that about shooting. The enemies as well, I think, are a little bit more varied because of you've got so many more options with things like the slide and things like that. And I will get onto the e.m.m.i. Oh my god, I will get onto the e.m.m.i. And so it's not just about attacking. You don't have to destroy everything or just kind of sort of avoid them or maybe hope they go the wrong way or something. You've always been able to do that in Metroid, you know, sort of try and slip past, but it is so much more natural in this game as well. You know, sort of there's an enemy over there, so you just, oh, it's you know, it's the flying things again. It's always the flying things that I remember. And they're coming down towards you and you sort of go, no, and you go slide and they miss, and then you just keep on running and you keep your momentum. There's such a great feeling of momentum in the game. Oh, you know what? I said there was no structure. Let's roll with that. Let's really hammer that home. Let's talk about the e.m.m.i. and the e.m.m.i. zones, I think? No, actually, we're going to talk about Adam briefly first. So Adam, if you don't know, Adam is your AI, and was in Fusion, and is based off, you know, Adam Malkovich, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to get deep into the lore. We've got a video all about the story of Metroid if you want a brief reminder. There'll be a link in the description. watch it. One thing that I don't want to say worried about, but I was a little bit apprehensive about was voice acting. And Adam, the AI, is fully voice acted. Every single thing, at least everything that I encountered, and I spoke to him a couple of times, every single thing he said, it's an AI, was completely voice acted. And I would have, but it's not like, it's not a human voice, which honestly makes an incredible amount of difference. It sounds like a generated, like a computerized generated voice. It's not like Microsoft Sam, don't worry. It sounds, sort of like, I suppose monotone is the best way to describe. I could do an impression.
The best course of action for you is to simply survive.
That sort of thing. And for the longest time, Metroid has always been about isolation and you being on your own. Fusion kind of dabbled outside of that, absolutely. And certainly things like 3 Corrupt, Prime 3 and stuff like that, they've dabbled outside of that. This feels like it's taking elements of that, like, Fusion, and putting it in a much more spooky way, so it feels much more isolating still. I think that Adam being voiced, I heard him, I think twice, maybe 3 times, and I played for about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes or something. I did everything that I was allowed to. I was the first person to do that. And I think, if anything, the cold, sort of monotone voice, there's no sort of, oh, be careful out there, we're concerned about you. It's an AI. It's just like, brr, 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 brr. This is what you need to do to survive. You're in a bit of a sticky situation, Ms. Samus. I think it actually adds to the atmosphere. It makes you feel even more alone, because the only thing you've got, the only companionship you have is an AI that doesn't really care about you. I mean, there's going to be some contention about that because of Fusion and all that sort of thing, I know. But, it's an AI, and it never sort of says, Samus, I hope you're keeping warm, and, sort of stay away from tall Chozo strangers. And I genuinely think it adds a lot of atmosphere in this game. Oh, good lordy. We'll talk about the e.m.m.i and then atmosphere as general. So the e.m.m.i, oh my god, I believe when I first started off, I found one of these damaged e.m.m.i, and, sort of you deal with a damaged e.m.m.i and, sort of, oh, run away, whoa. But it's damaged, it's a soft, gentle introduction to it. And then obviously you get the less damaged e.m.m.i, and the damaged one, the first one and the second one is the only way I can describe it. They had colors. I think the damaged one was damaged. The first one was white. The second one was yellow, I think. I would have to watch back the footage, but I'm pretty damn certain it was yellow. Maybe it was green. And the first non-damaged e.m.m.i that you come across, it's a pretty terrifying experience, to be brutally honest with you. Sort of you're in these tight corridors and things like that, and you've just got to escape it. You just absolutely have to escape it. You can't, shooting it does nothing. And, sort of, I'm sure if you've been keeping up with Metroid, you know all this. But then to actually have it in your hands, because it was all handheld that I played, and to actually have that experience firsthand, it's a completely different experience. It is almost harrowing. The first one wasn't so bad. It was the later one, honestly. But the first one, the area that you're in, the e.m.m.i zone, as it were, is the only area that an e.m.m.i can be in, and there are various different ones throughout, and the e.m.m.i chase you through that and all that sort of thing. They can hear you. If they see you, then they start chasing after you properly. It's, a fairly typical stealth mechanic, but they can also go pretty damn quickly, and they are, if anything, more fluid at moving around than you are. So the first e.m.m.i was pretty frightening. I managed to counter it a few times, though. I think I managed to counter the yellow or green one as well, and that was tremendous, because there is a window to counter, and I would have to watch back frame by frame to be absolutely certain. But when I was playing it, it felt like it wasn't like a standard, sort of, oh, you get captured and then, sort of 2.5 seconds into the animation or whatever, then you press the counter button and you've got a 6-frame window or something like that. I don't know, but it really, really felt like the e.m.m.i was waiting, and sometimes it would do it really quickly and sometimes it would do it very slowly, so you have to react. You can't just, sort of rely on something consistent. There's no consistency. There's no rule of thumb. You just have to wait, see the flash, and then you press it as quickly as you can. And to be honest, you kind of have to anticipate the flash, because I'm pretty sure the window is super fine and it's when the flash happens. And yeah, I managed to get it a decent number of times, but there were way more times. I would say maximum 20% of the time I managed to get a counter. And that was, honestly, it's really thrilling as a result, because you get captured by the e.m.m.i and you sort of think, if it just destroyed you, you'd sort of think, oh, game over. But it doesn't. It gives you that window. It gives you this tiny opportunity to show that you can beat it, and it stuns it briefly. If you manage it, if you manage it, it stuns it and you're able to get away, and sometimes it can actually be advantageous. But it's so risky that you'd be stupid to actually run into an e.m.m.i. It's a really, really brilliant system, and one that I think is going to be particularly exciting for things like speedruns. The second e.m.m.i was way, way more intimidating, because I got the cloak. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say the Phantom Cloak. I'm pretty sure that's not what it's called. But I got the cloak where, you know, sort of the e.m.m.i can't see you. But if an e.m.m.i touches you, so you can't just stand there and the e.m.m.i walks past you. And, if it touches you, it still grabs you and does all the normal stuff. It's very, very frightening. So you've got to try and use your environment to get around it. And there was like this ceiling, I remember, and walked in and it set off an alarm in this e.m.m.i zone straight away. No way I could avoid it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll put on I'll turn invisible and I'll grab onto this ceiling because it was magnetic, and grab onto it, clutching up like that. And the e.m.m.i comes through and it walks through and it's like, oh, what's going on? What's going on? The e.m.m.i comes scanning around, can't see anything. And then it, sort of goes a little bit ahead. So I dropped down and I managed to sneak through. That was great. I got eventually captured by the e.m.m.i, which was disappointing, but I thought, well, I'll just do the same thing again. So I went in that room, went onto the ceiling, the alarm had already gone off, the e.m.m.i starts coming in, goes, ooh, what's going on? And sort of goes, what's on the ceiling? It just climbed onto the ceiling. So it's no guarantee. You can't use the same tactics. It seems to be either, I don't think it's learning, but I think maybe it has sort of like a random chance as to whether it goes on the ceiling, sort of what surface it attaches to. And also this e.m.m.i, the first e.m.m.i couldn't get through small gaps. So you slide through something and the e.m.m.i's just like, well, mate, I can't do anything about that. Second e.m.m.i can get through those small gaps and it shows you in a cutscene, and it's just brilliant. The game teaches you so much without saying a word. It's wonderful. That's just what I wanted from a Metroid game. So let's talk about the atmosphere. The atmosphere is entirely, sort of circulated around the idea of dread, of fear, of sort of worry and things like that. And yeah, they nailed it. It's the e.m.m.i zone is particularly, sort of frightening and things like that. But even just standard enemies, you get a health fairly frequently. But at the same time, you generally get little bits. You get little bits of health, and you get recharge stations and stuff, but you get little bits of health, so you have to defeat an enemy in order to do it. And defeating an enemy comes with risk, and that's the same with previous Metroid games. And there are instances, just like previous ones, where you can kind of farm health, but it's not quick. It's not a quick process. And I get the feeling that health is definitely more of a scarcity. It may well be that it's just the part of the game that I played. But health definitely felt a lot more important and a lot more of a resource that you had to manage. You could, you take sort of 4 or 5 hits and you're already on really low health, kind of like the early Metroid games. It's easier to avoid damage, of course, with the new sort of just sort of acrobatic fluidity and stuff like that, movement. But at the same time, therefore, it's a skill-based thing again, and just like the previous games, but in a much more enticing and I told you there was no structure to this. One thing that I think a couple of people are going to be interested in is the level design and the openness of the game. I can't really speak for the overall openness of the game because I only played sort of an hour and a half, sort of one area, then I went to another area and that was my lot. But still a substantial amount of gameplay, don't get me wrong, but still it's hard to sort of say one way or the other. I would say it's definitely more fusion than super, I would say, but again, I've not played that far into the game, so I don't know for certain. It definitely feels like there's a specific path, but it also sometimes feels there are multiple ways to get there. And exploring always comes with rewards. Absolutely, it always comes with rewards. But you do have to do things in a certain order. It doesn't just open up and say, Samus, nasty Chozo, off you pop. So that, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing. I know some people were really hankering for a more Super Metroid style game, but honestly, given with, things like the e.m.m.i and that, I don't know how they could have done it as more of an open thing. Maybe, there no doubt is a way they could have done it, but it feels much more structured, much more tight. The entire time I was playing, not for a moment did I feel bored. Even the times when I was stuck, because I got stuck a few times as well, and I was just like, I have no idea where to go. I was looking at the map and I was going, oh, I've been through there. There's a door there. No, but I've been through there. And you know what it is? It's Metroid. It was usually just, oh, there's some blocks up there. You gotta shoot them. No wonder I went into that room and there was nothing. I managed to have a go at the first boss that they've shown off as well. That geezer. Like that. That was fun. I did him without dying because I'd already seen the treehouse, so I knew what to do. But really good fun. Genuinely a really good fun boss fight. One of the things that, again, I wouldn't say I've always found irritating about Metroid, but often, sort of you have to shoot enemies and you have to do it, you have to do the 45 or you have to jump and shoot and stuff like that. It always felt fine. It was difficult and it was fun. It was engrossing and engaging 100%, but it didn't feel natural or real. Completely different situation this time because you've got the free aiming again. And you can just go... And, watching the treehouse and stuff like that, they're perfectly serviceable at the game, but missing certain opportunities. And I was there just going, well, if I can do that. Oh, also, oh my God, I forgot to mention this. You may have seen in the treehouse, maybe they mentioned it, I don't know. But there's like these moments when you can do like cutscenes against the boss. And I'm sure it's the case for other bosses as well. Where you like slide through and you get this animation. Samus is like, wah, wah, pow, 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 stuff like that. And I remember thinking, that's okay, but I'm not super into that, It's fun to look at, but it kind of feels too easy. The best part is, you control the shooting even during those sections. So even though Samus is doing all these whammer jammer things, the first time I did it, I just didn't press any buttons because I was like, okay, this auto scene is going to play out. And it was a bit odd because Samus was just like, I've got you in a headlock and point the gun, and nothing was happening. And then I did it again and I was just mashing the missile button and, well, holding down the missile button and pressing the fire button. And it was happening, and it was just like I was dealing loads of damage, and that was so much more satisfying than just an auto sequence. That may well have been the case in Samus Returns as well. I haven't played a huge amount of Samus Returns because weird situation. I had it on a 3DS that I didn't keep, and it was very uncomfortable to play with. It was weird. But that was wonderful. That was a really, really sort of magical moment for me, a real watershed. It was just like, here's just do the thing. No, you still have to mash the button really as hard as you can. Super good. I must admit, I really wish I'd tried using the charge beam as well, because a standard shot likely wouldn't have done anything. I was using missiles because I was trying to deal as much damage as possible. Can you do a charge shot during all that as well? Is that going to do something different? It was just so fun, so cinematic. It felt so badass, felt so like the actual real Samus that we know and love, but on another level. I'm unbelievably excited, honestly. I loved every single second that I played of the game. And one thing I forgot to mention, the level layout and the design and stuff like that. It occasionally gives you these instances where it's kind of like angled sort of floors which Samus can't grab onto, or maybe she can in the future, who knows? And so you're kind of falling and you're sort of funneled down these areas, and it's fine, don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel unnatural or anything like that, but it sort of feels like it funnels you down a certain path. But usually when that happens, it's a bit of a surprise. It's sort of, oh, I'm falling, and you never die at the bottom. There's no sort of nasty traps or anything. But if you're paying attention, there are often bonus areas for you to, if you can time or you can angle your fall, or you can jump off at the right time or something like that, then you can enter these separate areas where you might find a bonus item, or you might find a shortcut or something. And that's great because it kind of funnels you. It says, this is the way you need to go. And there's no ambiguity about that. And this doesn't happen ultra often, but it does happen. But then it gives you opportunities to get more stuff. And there's also other things, like it sort of directs you roughly in the right direction. I had to redirect a load of like thermal energy in this area. And sort of, I remember thinking, I said, oh, the thermal doors are open now. And I was like, oh yeah, I could look at the map, but I can't remember exactly which thermal door I need to go through. I don't know what's on the other side. I can't remember. But then, like, the pipe work, which shows the thermal energy that you've just activated is now lit up, and it sort of takes you back. And it's so elegant. The entire game, or at least what I've played, is just so elegant. It's so fluid, so effortless, and it's just wonderful. I'm so excited to play the full game. I honestly, this is Metroid 5. This really is Metroid 5, and honestly, I think it's shaping up to potentially be one of the best Metroid games. Very early to say that. Cobweb, I'll let you in a minute. You, young miss, are upsetting the flow of my video by meowing. It's way too early to say that with any certainty, but from what I've played, the short section that I've played, it is just... It is at the same time so new and yet so true to the originals. It's this wonderful medley, and given that we've had so many other fantastic Metroidvanias over the years, Metroid, we've had things like Hollow Knight and all these sort of things, the bar has been really raised up. And damn it, if Nintendo really... So far, this game, Nintendo, they're really reaching for it. They might even be reaching the next rung, I don't know. I'd have to play the full game, but so far what I've played, super impressive, super exciting. Most importantly, it's just incredibly good fun. Genuinely atmospheric. I'm thrilled to bits. I really am. I'm a Metroid nerd. It's ticking all my boxes. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you aim at that subscribe button from anywhere, at any angle, and be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. In case you need any more proof that I'm a Metroid nerd, this is my little baby girlie. She's 16 years old, I've had her the entire time, and her name is Samus.